Hey guys, I'm Trixie, aka the Thoughtful Beast. I am here with Alyssa and Toni Junious. They have both been on this live show, and I'm super excited to have them back. And let's just start with a little introduction to you guys. So tell us a little bit about yourselves. Let's start with Toni.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, wrong way.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Toni Junious. And so I am Alyssa's sister, and I'm also the co-founder of Soultry Sisters, our arts and wellness collective. And so we empower women of color through like arts and wellness resources and tips. And then I'm also a public health grad student, so getting my master's in public health. And now I'm currently in Washington, D.C. doing that. So I'm excited to be here today.
And I'm Alyssa, the other sister, the other Junious sister. And we both run the arts and wellness collective called Soultry Sisters. I am locally based in San Diego, California, and I'm an artist, creator, and educator. And I have a dance company called Continuum.
I was literally screaming, I'm coming back! No one. Yay! I'm excited to have you both. It's going to be super interesting. And also, before I forget, I have this friend who I met in film class, and I was telling her about you guys, and she's super excited because she doesn't know any other Filipino Black people.
She don't know any other Black Filipinos?
No. And she's from here. Ooh. And I was like, wait, what? But yeah, I told her about you guys, so hopefully she's able to catch this, but she was just very excited. And she's young. She's like 21, but I wanted to tell you that also, just so in case I forget to hook you up with her after.
Yes.
Please remind me. But yeah, I'm super glad to have you guys here, and we're going to talk about you both being what you just said, Black Filipinos, and all the different nuances that comes with it. So why don't one of you let's start with like your parents. Let's just give a little bit of background to it.
Yeah, so we'll start with our family history. First of all, we want to say thank you, Trixie, for having us here on The Thoughtful Beast. We really enjoy being on this show and having these honest conversations, and you always create a really safe space. So if there's any place we want to kind of talk about ourselves and share our identity story of being Black Filipino, it's definitely here. So a quick family story is our mother, Evangeline, is first generation from the Philippines, and my father, Henry, is from Houston, Texas. They both joined the U.S. Navy, and that's how they met. So a big misconception about my father and my mother is that my father was the only one to join the military and met my mother in the Philippines, when in actuality, they both met while in, I believe it's sea school, Toni, is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and when they were both being like corpsmen. So yeah, they both met in school, and Toni and I we were both born at Balboa Hospital in San Diego. And yeah, so that's pretty much our family story. They met in the military and they made us.
They did make you. So let's get down to it then. Okay, so already just being Filipino, I know like that comes with a lot. Like it's a really beautiful, big culture. It obviously has its pros and cons. How is that? What is it like to be of mixed heritage?
Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, so like growing up, like we just knew our parents. So we knew our mom was Filipino, our dad is Black. And so like people don't really know this, but when we were really little, we did a lot of Filipino traditions, cultural activities. So we went to different festivals, we learned cultural dances and all those things when we were very young. So we were very immersed in like Filipino culture, and because our mom's Filipino extended family are all in San Diego as well, and we've lived most of our life in San Diego. Being military kids, we have traveled a lot, or like had to move a lot because of our parents, but San Diego is like our home base, and so our Filipino family's here. So we grew up like eating the food, the culture, all that stuff, and we could speak a little bit more when we were younger. And then our
English.
Yeah. And then our dad's side, Houston, like we would visit there pretty frequently when we were young too. And our dad was very vocal about his Black culture and Southern culture and talking about his experience being a Black man. And so he would talk about like Juneteenth and stuff as well, like as we grew up. So I know recently Juneteenth has been more popularized, but in our family, we've always talked about it and we've always like celebrated it in some type of way. So it's very interesting because a lot of times people do ask us like, oh, like, what are you more of? Or like, what are like, and all those kind of questions. And for us, it's really interesting because we have grown up very immersed in both. So it's when people ask those questions, we're like, well, we're both. So I don't know what to answer that.
That's good though. Like, cause one, like those questions are weird, but like, I guess it's mostly like, you know, like I'll have a lot of mixed cousins and a lot of them are mixed with white. And I mean, that's a whole different like mix. So I don't really know their story, but I know for a lot of them, like that was like difficult.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
difficult.
Our mother was the first to marry outside of her race.
Oh.
She was also the first to join the military as a woman because a lot of the women in our family usually are just nurses and teachers and they don't join the armed forces. So my mom was already, she's an independent woman. She's going to do what she wants. She's a rebel. It was just even her story as a Filipino woman is different. And then let alone having mixed babies who are Black-Filipino. So that's kind of like a backstory of our mother. She's a different type of Filipino. When you think about the stereotype, she's not, the average.
That's like really cool that they both met like while they were serving, like, and they both have that, like, and that, I mean, like, I don't know, I can only assume that like it kind of helped them, like knowing, like having that bond together, and then also like both having like that strength because, interracial couples are still not cool today, which I forget because we're in California. But in many places, like that is a no bueno.
They both left home. They both left home, and that's where they found home within each other in their relationship. They both joined the military, wanting to better their lives, wanting to serve their country. They are proud to be like here and serve. And so it's just really interesting that like people normally think of like a patriotic person as like a white person, but like I don't know any two people in the world that are more patriotic than my parents, and they're Black and Filipino. And one is an immigrant.
Yeah,
so
I was going to add that too. My mom's a Filipino immigrant, which also people don't really talk about as much. But I also wanted to add that like in our like families, like there wasn't a lot of mixed race like cousins and stuff until we were older. Like, so when we were very young, those like very like formative years, we were the only ones that like looked different. But like for us, like Alyssa and I, we felt the same. Like we had the same Lola, like grandma, we had the same. So it's like, oh, it's different. So it's like ever since a small age, it's always like other people trying to place identifiers or like labels on us, because like we know ourselves and we know like who our parents are and how they raise us, but it'd be like other people, even like our own family and friends, who'd be like, oh, so you're this or you're that. So I feel like that was like the challenging part growing up, is like being the only like mixed people in our like smaller circles. So it's like there's no one to really like model like what to say or like
how to feel,
like, what our experience is. Like it was, even us being sisters, we have very
different experiences
too.
Like even like I remember like distinctly memories of being picked up from school and everyone saying like, that's your mom. But if my dad picked me up, no one would be like, that's your dad. Everyone's like, oh yeah, that's your dad. But if it was my mom, everyone's like, oh, is that your stepmom? I'm like, no, that's my mom. But like that is the kind of stuff that growing up mixed race, that like you're always like, whoever you don't look like, you're always like defending that is your paternal parent.
That's crappy and annoying.
Yeah, people just don't think your mother's your mom. Well, for us.
Yeah. It's so weird because like they are, they're your parents. And like yes, I have heard stories from like other friends too, just being like, you know, they thought my husband was stealing my children because they have my skin complexion and not his. And it's just like, that's, people got like, it's so interesting how people can be so confident about things that like you shouldn't let it's so awkward that you were making this assumption. You know?
Yeah, like so many times, yeah, we get that, what you're talking about, Trixie. Like people will come up to us and be like, "Oh, what are you?" And then
like
they're basically like demanding an answer, and it's like, why do you feel like you have the right to know like what I am or to ask me that? Like it could be strangers on the street, and you're like, why are you asking me this? Or even like friends that we're close with. Especially like Asian American friends I've had that seem the most anti-Black in my experience, to ask these very like weird questions, and like questions that are like, why do you feel you have the right to ask me this? Like, I don't ask you about your heritage, where you're from. So why? And then like if we tell them, oh, we're Filipino and Black, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, do you speak Tagalog? Oh, have you been to the Philippines?
We get 21 questions on how Filipino are you?
Yeah, so we have to prove it, like have a badge of Filipino heritage or something. So it's like really interesting to have people from our own heritage and culture to then question us. And that's hard too, because it's like trying to find that belonging and like in Filipino Americans. And I'm very particular because my experience in America or in the US with Filipinos is very different than when I go to the Philippines or when I go to other places. So Filipino Americans in the US to me have been the most, in my experience, like not welcoming and not open to me and my experience.
Anti-Black, racist.
And they question my identity, like, oh, are you Filipino? Oh, I didn't know this. Is your mom this? Where's your mom from in the Philippines? And you have to explain versus in the Black community, yes, sometimes we don't feel as belonging there either. But if I go to an event and show up as what I look like and appear to be, I'm welcomed and they don't really ask me as many questions. Like I have a right to be in that space versus like in Asian American, Filipino American spaces, there's definitely that weird of like, why are you here?
It's like this outsider energy. And it's like, it's hard to describe, but even though no one will say anything, it's just the looks you get or the engagement and conversation, the kind of questions they ask. And just to go back to like when I was 5 is the first time I experienced racism, and it was from a Filipino girl. I just moved to Japan. And she was talking behind me in line and she was saying bruja and laughing. Well, I know what bruja means because hello, like my mom's Filipino. And I looked back and I said, I know what you're saying. Stop talking about me. And she was like, how do you even know I'm talking about you? I was like, I know what you said. You called me a witch. She was like, how would you even know that? I was like, because my mom. She's like, because you're mom, but you're Black. And I was just like, I didn't even know what like Black was, because as a kid, I was raised just like, we didn't talk about Black and Filipino. Like I knew my mom was Filipino because she talks about Filipino culture. And I knew my dad was from Houston, Texas. He didn't say like, he said, my mom said, I'm from the Philippines. My dad said, I'm from Houston. They never said, I'm Asian and I'm Black. It was never like a race conversation. So I remember going home that day and asking my mom in the car, like, hey, like, what does Black mean? And she was like, she literally like, and this is like the whole thing about how kind of messed up this thing is. She looked at me and she was like, who said that to you? And I said, some kid called me Black. She was like, you're not Black. And I was like confused because I was like, okay, well, I'm not Black because I don't even know what that word means. But now that I think back at it, like my mom's response to even like me not being Black was like, what is that supposed to mean? Mm-hmm. So that just planted a seed of, so if I'm not Black, but I'm not Filipino because this girl told me, like, what am I? So like that literally set the platform for like me struggling to find who I was.
Yeah, it's always like this question mark. Like I feel like for mixed race, mixed ethnicity people, especially because it wasn't only until the last few years that now on like the census and like standardized forms, you can mark like 2 or more races or other. Because I remember growing up, like I was very, very young, like probably the first time I had to take a standardized test. And then the teachers like, I was like taking a long time to fill out the form because I didn't know what to put because you have to check one box, like check one. And I kept telling the teacher like, oh, I can't choose one, I'm 2. And she's like, well, you have to choose one. And I was like, well, I can't because my mom's Filipino and then I guess my dad's Black, whatever that means. And she was like, oh, well, you can choose like the African-American one. And I was like, okay. So then there I just checked the box for African-American. And so now at least you can choose 2 or more races. But that just goes to show that like mixed identity, our own experiences have not really been made aware on like the forefront of things until like very recent years.
Yeah. And like, okay, because like I know the Filipino side, right? And I know there's a lot of anti-Blackness in Filipino culture. Some of it is very just like, oh, dude, like that's hella racist, like overtly, and then some of it is like covertly and also just like integrated into our own culture, and it's not necessarily about anti-Blackness, but it is like colorism, like in the bleaching of our skin. And I think I've told you both, like my mom bleached my skin and I didn't know. I thought she was giving me acne cream, which apparently it was both. She was giving me stuff for my acne, but the whole time she was also bleaching this like the crap out of my skin. Because I used to play in the sun a lot, and apparently she like was like, no, we're not getting dark. And so has that, yeah, like what is it like from your Filipino side, like in your family, like, and like you said, like it's been, they were the first interracial couple, right? And so you were the first interracial children. How were they, and has it gotten better?
Well, I mean, to be totally honest, like some people in my mom's family said, don't marry my dad. They said, don't marry him. If you marry black men beat their women. They beat their wives. She was told that by her own family. But it was too late because she was pregnant with me. So
did it anyway.
So she was already a rebel. So not even a rebel. She just loved my dad and they loved each other. But she was willing to go against the advice of her elders, which said, don't marry him. Like they were even probably supportive of her just having me because they know Filipinos also are religious and they don't want you to, I want you to have your child. So just knowing that that was said by elders, like knowing that growing up in my life, I was like, so like, it's just hurtful to know that that's what people thought about my father. To know that people, you know, that he had to prove himself from day one, that he didn't start with being welcomed. It was more like, who is this guy? And so, you know, he's done everything he can to prove his niceness. He's in our family, but it still hurts to know that that was the start. I mean, of course, like our family, they would say like they love my dad and he's like one of their favorite uncles, but to know that that was a conversation that had to be said to my mother to protect her, you know, that black men beat their wives was just like, that's something that doesn't sit right with me.
Yeah.
And then even like the colorism, like I remember playing outside at my aunt's house and I was swinging on a swing, and the swing, I guess there was a part of my back that got exposed. Cause like when you sit down, like, you know, you get the plumber's crack or whatever they want to call it, your booty out. And so I was swinging on a swing and my booty was out because my shirt went up, my pants went down. And so I had this whole strip of my back that got darker from the sun. And I remember she was like, oh no, like you got so black. And I was like, well, I thought I was already black. So it's kind of weird that you're saying I'm so black now, whatever. So she like ran upstairs and like got this like thing of bleaching cream and was like, she started rubbing it on my back as if it was like so important for me to, I guess, erase the sun. And I remember telling my mom that, and instead she was like, well, don't use that bleaching cream, use papaya soap instead. I'm like, so it's
Yeah, ever since I can remember, I thought papaya soap was like an after soap that you just use just being outside. It's just part of like a hygiene. You just use papaya soap. So if anyone tuning in doesn't know what papaya soap is, so papaya has like skin lightening, brightening, extract like properties. So a lot of Filipinos use papaya in different forms to brighten skin. So our mom, our aunts would give us, I remember in the little box, the papaya soap. And whenever it run out, she just have another box. And I just thought it was a part of like, okay, you just like do it after. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I guess I started reading the box or something.
We didn't know what it was. We just used it because we were told to use it.
Like, they just say like, oh, when in the shower, always use that. So I just always used it, and I didn't know. And then I got older, I would stop using it. And then like our Filipino cousins, like if they go out in like the sun or if they're in the beach, then they always talk about like, oh, I don't want to get dark. And so it's like always that like that commentary of like, oh, you don't want to get dark. And it's like, okay, well, I'm already dark, so you don't want to be like me. You know, like as a young kid, you don't know. But yeah, that has like colorism has been very ingrained in the Filipino culture. And now our family has more mixed race, like our little cousins and stuff, from a lot of different races and ethnicities now. But our family doesn't really we don't really talk about those kind of things. Like we're all just like, oh, we're all family, but we don't really talk about like each person's different experience or their own specific culture. So we do have other cousins, but usually it's more of like, oh, mixed babies are so pretty. Like, oh, your hair is so pretty. Oh, I want babies like you. And it's kind of like, okay, but what about like my actual experience? So yeah, it's interesting because they don't really bring it up. And so we've just kind of lived our life like being a part of like a Filipino culture, and like we eat the food, we cook the food, we're part of the different traditions and festivities. But then like there's those like weird divisions of like, okay, you are us, but at the same time you're not us. And we haven't, in my experience, I haven't really experienced that on our dad's side. Like our Black side, they just seem welcoming of us. They don't really like, I mean, sometimes there is like, okay, your hair is pretty and stuff because, you know.
They were excited. They were excited about our mother because I remember my dad said he called home and said, hey, like I have this girlfriend, I'm going to marry her. And they're like, oh, describe her. And they're like, oh, she's Filipino. And they're like, like the girl from Soul Train with the long hair. Ooh. They're like, oh, we can't wait to meet her. She's like the girl on Soul Train. So they were just excited to welcome her. And then, but I mean, my mom was not the girl from Soul Train. So they were pleasantly surprised that she is still a sweet woman, but their reaction was not negative. Like, oh, beware. She's going to hurt you. It was more like, it was still like the only Filipino they knew of was the girl on Soul Train, but they were excited to meet her and they were welcoming to her and the family. So it's like, that just shows you like the difference of being, you know, mixed race, and one side that's kind of like, and the other side that's like, come here, we love all of y'all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned how to do my hair from my grandma and my aunts. Because my mom didn't really know. She would put like mousse and gel stuff to dry our hair out. And they were like, come here, we're going to put some oil in there. We're going to braid it up for you. Don't worry. So it's like, I'm thankful for, you know, my dad's side to kind of help us navigate being Black women, because we had like, I mean, because on the Filipino side didn't really help us navigate the identity part. I mean, I love Filipino culture. I love my family, but I didn't feel it was an environment that really helped us identify. Whereas the other side is like, that's where I really found my identity of like how to do my hair, just how to feel confident in who I was. It doesn't matter. You know, I always felt that from my grandma, like you good girl, like no matter what, don't worry about those kids. And like, and because I, you know, in Texas, my grandma said, look, because you're a mixed girl, she told me this, you need to, you know, be mindful that because you're mixed, you are different, you know? And so she warned me about that. So when I experienced being like treated differently, my grandma had already put it into my head that like, you know, you are, you know, you're different. So just know that. Because I went to kindergarten in Texas. So the first time I went to school, I went to Ines Carroll in Houston, Texas. And I just so thankful that I started school with living with my grandma, because she's the one who really set the foundation for me to know who I was and feel like I could, you know, I don't know, feel accepted at home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. So. I'm glad you had her. Yay, Grandma.
Yeah, she also said, don't be afraid to correct somebody too. She was like, be nice, but don't be too sweet. Have a little spice.
Yeah.
So
that's good. So I'm excited that both of you are here again, because you guys had talked to me about, like, even though, like, obviously you're both Black Filipino because you're sisters, you've had really different experiences growing up. So I would love to hear that, because it's like two different perspectives. Like, you know, like, because sometimes people go like, oh, like, you know, these people feel this way, this people feel this way, mixed people feel another way. Like, there's only like 3 like different experiences of something. So I mean, I feel very fortunate to have both of you and to have both of you talk about your different experiences. So Toni, would you like to start?
Yeah, like that's why actually me and Alyssa didn't really even talk about our identity until like maybe 2 years ago. We started having these conversations. It wasn't until like the last year that we really started having more really honest conversations about it. So even that is kind of telling, that like, even as someone who identifies as like mixed, like we don't even know how to articulate our experience because it is very unique. And I feel like that is why a lot of people don't even know how to like go about it or talk about it, because like being mixed, a lot of times we have to like feel like we have to choose one identity. So then we'll just identify as that identity and then just kind of live life that way. But it is really challenging, like when, like we already described, that our own upbringing is very open to both and very rooted in both. So like I remember being like, when I was younger, we because of the military, we moved to Maryland for a few years, and I was still in elementary school, so I still, like, you know, you're like a young kid, you don't really know much. But I remember that, like, since I was mixed, like all the kids, because it's like predominantly Black area where we stayed in, all the kids would like ask me like, oh, what are you? What are you? And then when I tell them like, oh, I'm like half Asian or I'm mixed or whatever, then they would like latch onto that and like really like, I guess it was like a thing that they liked about me. And then I was talking to Alyssa earlier, like I didn't realize I got older that I guess they were kind of like harassing me, like, because like then boys would be like, oh, I like you, or like trying to grope me. Anyways, but it's like they, I guess, fetishize my mixedness. And so then it like made me feel like, as a young girl, like, okay, this is kind of weird. Like, I don't know why they're treating me differently. Like, I'm just Toni. Like, I'm Toni every day. I don't know why they're just like, oh, okay, like you're different now. So it was like not technically a negative experience because they were excited about my identity, but it wasn't the experience like I wanted. Like, I didn't want to be like looked at as like exotic or something. And then as I got a little bit older, like in high school, like in North County, San Diego, there is like more diversity. And I did have friends that were mixed race as well, but like we don't talk about like mixed race identity. Like we would know like, okay, your mom's Filipino or your mom is Mexican. Okay. Like we would understand, like I even dated guys that were mixed race, but we still never talked about our identity, which is really interesting. And so then it was in college when I went to UC Irvine that I was around predominantly Asian American population, when I was like, okay, like, oh, I found some people, you know, like there's a lot of Filipinos. Like I joined a dance team, there's a lot of Filipinos. I was like, okay, this is cool. Like maybe I'll be able to like, they would like accept me for who I am. And I get there and then Filipino Americans were treating me like I was different, or like trying to prove like my Filipino-ness, like, oh, where's your mom from? Do you speak Tagalog? Like, it's like Filipino Olympics. Like, I don't know, we have to have a medal or something.
Seriously, if he's certified Filipino.
Yeah. So like in college, when, you know, you really are finding your identity, I felt like questioned a lot by people who I considered friends who were Filipino, which was really odd to me because I thought, like, my expectations were them to be more welcoming. And then I would get a lot of questions of like, oh, but are you this? So that was a weird experience. So then I was kind of like okay, I'm still not very like welcomed in this space. And then like in my college, I also was friends with the Black community, and like they're welcoming too, but there's always this like in between of being mixed. It's like, okay, like I'm not Filipino enough, I'm not Black enough, like, oh, I don't do this, I don't do that. So it was still very like not, it's still very challenging for me. So college, okay, I was like, I did whatever I did. It was a good experience overall, but like identity, I was still confused. So then after college, I lived in Guam for 2 years. And if anyone tuning in is not aware, Guam is a U.S. territory. And their indigenous population is Chamorro, and their population is about 1/3 Filipino. And they're like only 3-hour plane ride from the Philippines. So their population is very Filipino, and Chamorro culture is very similar to Filipino culture as well. So that is when I finally, in 2016, so after my whole life, I was 23, I get to Guam, a small island of the Pacific, and then I felt like belonging and accepted for like one of the first times in my life. It's also different because the culture there, they kind of go based on your mom, like whatever your mom's ethnicity is, then you're that when you fill out paperwork and like just when you tell people. So because my mom is Filipina, then I was able to say, oh yes, I'm Filipina. And then if I said that, they wouldn't question me, versus like in the US, people like Filipino Americans would question me, but Chamorro people and Filipino people in Guam didn't question me really, because a lot of indigenous people, even in the Philippines, look like me and Alyssa. They have curly hair, they're darker skin. And so it was finally like, okay, they understand that I'm Filipino. I also learned to cook more cultural food there and stuff. So it was very like welcoming, like a homecoming for me. And Guam has a special place in my heart for many, many reasons, but especially for my identity, because I got to be friends with a lot of Filipino people, Chamorro people, and when we would talk about our culture and when I would learn more about my culture, it was more of acceptance and excitement. And then I got to visit the Philippines for the first time when I was in Guam too, and I went there a few different times, and now I have some friends in the Philippines. So it was such a different experience to experience the Filipino culture from, well, one, the source in the motherland, and then two, also Guam, which is very close to the source. So I didn't feel as much as that anti-Blackness and stuff from my personal experience there. And so that was really like really important for my own identity. So I started identifying as actually Pacific Islander, because I feel like Pacific Island culture in Guam welcomed me, and then also in the Philippines, it's a lot more Pacific Islander and island culture than Asian American. And so now I identify more as like Filipino Pacific Islander than like Asian American. And then when I moved back to the States, now I live in Washington, D.C. I go to school, and like my close friends here are predominantly Black and also African, like Nigerian ethnicity. So now, like, so Guam was kind of like me coming to my own terms with my identity as being Filipina and Pacific Islander. And then now here in DC, I'm having a more positive experience with my Black identity. And I even lead a Black student association on campus, and no one questions my identity as to lead an organization like that. So that has been positive too. And so it's like, as I've gotten older, I've started to have more positive experiences of the two ethnicities I am being more welcoming. But I also feel like maybe it's because like I'm more stronger in my own identity now. So like if people do say otherwise, I'm like, whatever, I know who I am. But it's also nice to be affirmed with like people just welcoming me in and like not questioning me. And whatever I say I am, they're fine with that. And they don't try to question me as much as when I was younger. So it's definitely taken a long time, and it has been a lot of like inner work. And no one teaches you how to do this. And it varies all the time. I like to say like identity is fluid. Like some days, if people ask me what I am, I'll say Black. Some days people ask me and I'll say like, okay, I'm Black and Pacific Islander. Other times I'm Black and Filipino. So because all of these are like words. Like obviously words are important, but at the same time, like it also depends on like context and like who the person is, what I feel like disclosing or not. Because at the same time, this is my experience. So no one is entitled to know what I am. But yeah, it's been a journey and I'm still learning. But for me personally, it's been until my older years that I finally found like my own identity.
That's so interesting that it took so long for you, but it's also like understandable. Also, because it's like, really, when you're a kid, like you need more guidance about that stuff. Because how are you supposed to know? Like, you know, like you guys said, like you didn't know what Black was. So why would you even know to ask about it, you know, until like it finally came up? And I'm so glad like you found that in the Philippines, because again, like, you know, Filipinos, Asians can be very anti-Black. So I'm so glad you had that experience. And do you remember the name of the indigenous people? Like Aitas, is that correct?
I forget how to pronounce
people.
it.
I think it's Atna.
Because there are the indigenous people in the Philippines. There's a big group of them that they look like you.
Mm-hmm.
They're part of the indigenous people of the Philippines.
Yes.
Like, hey man, they're there. They're part of the indigenous people, and it's just like, it's so interesting because I literally only found that out like this past weekend, because in the Filipino panel that I watched for Black Lives, they talked about it. They're just like, they're part of the indigenous people of the Philippines. And like, it was so awkward to learn that, because I was like, how come no one has told me this?
Yeah.
And like, it makes it sadder that, you know, like when you look at like movie stars from the Philippines and stuff like that, like they're all like bleached white as paper. And it like makes me like, it's just weird. It's weird to realize that like we have gotten just like so far. And
so
like,
whitewashed.
Yeah, so whitewashed. And like, because
and even with the Spanish too, like sometimes my mom, like when we ask her like, oh, like certain Tagalog words or whatever, then like obviously a lot of that is Spanish words, but then it's like, okay, even with like Filipinos, like digging deeper to learn more of like the indigenous Filipino language too is very powerful, because Spanish was a colonizing force and has done so many different atrocious things to our country. So I feel like that also is like a thing for Filipinos too, to kind of reclaim like the indigenous parts of our culture too. That's not the Spanish and the white.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the thing too about the Philippines. Filipinos are of a mixed culture. Think about like the Spanish coming over, the Chinese, and like Indonesian. It's like we're, you know, so many islands, and you know, so it's like, so when people are like, Filipinos are like, oh, I'm just Filipino. I'm like, you mix, whether you believe it or not. We're all mixed. So for me to say like I'm mixed, I'm like, well, even if I was Filipino, I would be mixed. Yeah. Even if I'm just Black, I'm mixed. Think about, you know, coming over as slaves. Like, we're mixed. Yeah. We're all mixed. So the whole thing about me being mixed is that's always been a hard thing for me. I'm like, but aren't we all mixed? I've always had that question. I'm like, I know I'm mixed because my parents aren't from the same like countries, but their races or their ethnicities are mixed. The history of colonizing and colonizers have made them mixed. So it's like, if we all just follow the history, it's like, so how am I more mixed than you and that person? You know?
And like you said, like it's also like the islands, like, because even though like my ancestry is indigenous, like I'm also from another indigenous group, like we're the Cordilleras or Igorot, and like that's our indigenous group. We're the mountain people. We're up in the mountains, so we didn't get like colonized by Spanish people. That just didn't happen. But obviously, if you look at me, like it was mixed with something, and it's not necessarily always like colonization. Like being an island, that's what happens. And I like took the freaking ancestry test because like my boyfriend's mom worked for the company, just like threw kits at us, and like, you know, like I got Filipino and then I got Pacific Islander, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense, because they're islands and they traveled between the islands to each other.
To get resources and stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they run out of, you know, their things, they're like, okay, let me go see what they have over there. Hey, thank you. And, you know, maybe they meet somebody and fall in love and have babies.
Yeah.
You know, it could happen that way too. It doesn't always have to be colonization too. Like, who knows? It could have been people just exploring. I mean, specifically with the islands.
Yeah. Because that's nature, right? Like you run out of resources, like you need to go look. And like exploration and curiosity is also just like natural too. Like it just is.
And I sorry.
No. It's okay. I just like wanted to get into your.
And I wanted to also point out too, just like some differences. So I won't go too detailed, but for me, like me and Toni, we mentioned that we lived in Maryland, but I was in Maryland during 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and so all we know, like those are some hard years, and so unfortunately I was not just, you know, treated nicely because I was a mixed girl. I actually felt ostracized. I remember when I first moved to Maryland and went to the school that I went to, they teased me and called me Valley Girl because I spoke like I was from California. I would say like a lot, and they were like, why you talk so white, Valley Girl? Valley Girl. And I was just like, what? I'm just me. And so I remember I was wearing like Vans, and they're like, do you skate? And I'm like, no. They're like, poser. Why you wear Vans? I'm like, because I'm from San Diego. We wear Vans. I don't know what to tell you. And also on the East Coast, they don't be wearing flip-flops like that. So like, why your toes out? I'm like, I just like to be in flip-flops. So culturally, I was shocked at just the level of like question about like the choice of clothes. I remember I had like my favorite pair of Levi's. I only had like 2 pairs of jeans. And I remember wearing my Levi's like a second day in the week, and someone was like, didn't you already wear those like pants? And I guess it wasn't cool to wear, but like, culturally, because I grew up in San Diego, and then I go to like living in PG County, one of the most if people don't know, like it's a very affluent county where a lot of Black people live. So
it's the most affluent Black, predominantly Black or all Black county,
in the US. So just like, you know, affluent people. So me just being my Cali girl basic self was just like, what are you doing, girl? Get it together. And so I found myself, you know, trying so hard to be other than myself. I changed the tone of my voice. I cried and asked my mom, can I go to like this store called LVLX and like get some new clothes? And I also like had bullying. I was bullied because I was told that I thought I was better than everybody. I remember going to the mall and I would wear my hair out, and people would throw gum in my hair. So if anyone sees pictures of me from like 8th and 9th grade, I wore my hair in a bun a lot because of that one traumatic event when someone like threw gum in my hair because my hair was cute and down or something. I don't know. And it's just like things like that I experienced from, you know, Black girls that just, I was like, I'm just like you. Like, you're not like me. Like, I just felt like I was in the middle. Like, I'm not white enough. I'm not Filipino enough. I'm not Black enough. And like, I have this whole, I'm not enough. So for me, like, that is what I've been working through, is like the not enough versus like identifying as Filipino or Black. I have a confidence issue because of growing up mixed race, of not feeling enough. I didn't have the words to explain, so I went into being an artist. And I also at a young age started talking to boys because girls were not nice to me. But guys would talk to me, but obviously it's on the other side of like, because you're, you know, special and cute and pretty. And so I just felt like I had nowhere to turn. Like, guys were either into me because I was mixed, girls didn't like me because I was mixed. At home, there was like anti-Blackness. I'm just like, I have nowhere to go. So honestly, dancing and throwing myself into the arts is how I was able to feel like enough, because at times I felt so low because of my lived experience of being a mixed girl. And you know, I think it's great. I went to Guam and I was able to I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. That I feel like I went to Guam, and it was like, you know, great to experience like what Toni's talking about. But you know, she's saying, you know, her story of like coming to terms with her Pacific Islander side and being in Maryland right now and finding her identity with her Black side. It's not the same experience in North County, San Diego. It's not the same experience living here in San Diego in North County. I still feel very much like I'm working through that, and everything that's happening right now is bringing it up for me. If you know my work, a lot of my work is like pro Black, you know, social conscious work, because I'm trying to find it so much. Like if you look at my work, I'm trying to find it. I'm trying. It is an effort. So that's where I'm at. I'm like in the middle of it. You know, some people are, it's past and they can celebrate their identity, and some people like haven't found it, but I'm in the middle of it. And this is just like, I guess this is amplifying my experience, because this is a personal, Toni knows, it's been a personal journey for me to find my identity, because she shared that with me. And I was like, I want that too. But living and working in a white space does not make it easy. Being in Guam, surrounded by Filipinos and Chamorros, it's so easy to find yourself. Living in DC, where there's a lot of Black and African friends and people to be immersed with, is healing. But when you live in a white space and work up in North County, it's way harder to find that healing. And that's exactly why Toni and I created Soultry Sisters. Because we weren't feeling seen, felt, and heard in North County. So creating an arts and wellness collective is a healing space, not only for our community, but for us.
It was like once me and Alyssa started having these conversations with each other, we're like, wait, if we're both feeling this, like there must be other people feeling this too. And like, yes, it's hard living in a place like North County when like there's KKK presence, there's white supremacy presence, and people think California is all, oh, the beach, everyone's a hippie and kumbaya. And no, it's not like that. Like Alyssa is saying, it's very hard and difficult. And I feel like people pacify the situation being like, oh, everyone, if we all just did yoga, and like, that's not how it
works. The microaggressions are so real.
Yeah. And so like, that's why we created Soultry, and like it's still very hard to like, even us as like entrepreneurs and business women, to like be able to create in a way that people just like understand us, because they still don't really know. And so we're trying to have that space for people who can either identify similarly as us or feel like they don't have a community, then we can bring that community. Because like, I guess like our different stories are just sharing that like, just since we're little, we just wanted to have community and we wanted to feel belonging. So that's why we ended up making Soultry, because it's like even us as adult women still feel lack of community. So that's what we were really like, our main goal is like whatever we do to just have everyone that comes to us like feel like they're part of the community, because we know how hard it is to not have that outside. But yeah, it is very challenging and it is a journey. So especially now during everything happening, there's many, many, many people who we thought supported us and supported people that look like us, and they have been very vocal to not be. And that is also very alarming.
That sucks. And that sucks. And I'm really proud of you guys, because honestly, like, you know, like there is a culture of like, you don't like it, leave. Like that's part of cancel culture. Just like, well, this sucks. Bye-bye. I love that you're just like, nope, like this is where I live. I'm going to find this community here and be here, because honestly, like, if you guys didn't do that, then yeah, like where would the voices be? Like, and I understand, like, you know, like, and it can be dangerous and it is different for everyone. Like, but it's like also great to see people like you guys like stand your ground and be like, no, like we belong here. And like, even if you don't make us feel like we belong here, we're going to make sure that like we belong here, because I feel like that's how you can change it. Because if you're there, they have to at least acknowledge your existence at some point.
And that's exactly why, you know, I've worked so hard to be a leader in my field, leader as a choreographer, a leader as a, you know, wellness practitioner, Pilates instructor. If I am at the forefront, if I have a seat at the table and I'm helping make decisions, I can make sure that one, I feel seen, felt, and heard, but also the people, you know, that have the same experience as me or may look like me also feel that. So part of me becoming a leader was part of my resistance, part of my protest. I'm like, you know what? If I sit here and take the crumbs that you know, are giving me, like part of me reclaiming that I am enough is baking my own damn cookie and eating it and sharing it with the people that, you know, want it too. You know, I just feel like that's a lot of people are like, oh, it's so great that you're a leader. I'm like, I have no choice. Like, it's so interesting. People are like, oh my God, you're doing your thing. Like, I see you. I'm like, what choice do I have? And this is me liberating myself. And I'm as a Black Latino woman, and as I have the capacity to not only liberate myself, but liberate others. And I feel like that's why Black women are underestimated. We liberate ourselves while liberating others. And I own that ancestral strength. And that's the kind of power that I've been stepping into, that this is not just about me. This is about us. This is about our community. So although like I feel like I'm in a very vulnerable state, I feel like this vulnerable state is giving me the access to the power that we need as a society to shift into this divine feminine energy of holistic living, conscious living, questioning everything and affirming ourselves. This is so much bigger than mixed race identity that I realize. This is about us, you know, being for us. Whoever wants to be in the room is welcome. Yeah. Being inclusive and equitable. So although it's very personal how we created Soultry, it's also very selfless.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the feedback we get is that people, like, maybe they don't know what a Soultry event is going to be like, but once they leave, they're like, oh, this is what I needed in whatever aspect that is. And so that really like warms our heart when we hear that, because like Alyssa said, this is personal. Like, we're doing this for our own sanity, for our own healing, but to know that other women also find healing for their own selves has been like affirming for us. And also like in the last few months, like even after COVID, like us being more unapologetic about our own mission and what we want to do for our community. And especially now in the last few weeks, like us owning that we're Black women and that we're women of color trying to uplift our community. I feel like the more vocal and strong in our own identity and our own experience we've been starting to get more support and like people wanting to support us and reach out to us and give us opportunities to share our voice. And so like for me, it's been really affirming that like, okay, like this work is hard and like not everyone is going to understand, but there's also people that see us and see what we're doing and that want to like lift us up in what our platform is. So that has been helpful, that like even though this is hard and like me and Alyssa have very intimate conversations all the time and like just venting, but like having a space like even like this, Trixie, is like healing for us to be able to like share what our experience is. So that has been helpful too.
I also want to point out that us owning like being Soultry Sisters, because at first we're like, oh, Soultry Sisters, it's like, you know, are we like pushing out like the fact that other people, like maybe like men and other people who identify as other identifiers, are they not going to want to come to a Soultry Sister event because it's very centered around like Black and women of color? And the answer is actually no. Like owning and standing and saying like, we're Soultry Sisters. This is who we are. We've actually attracted like some males and some other like people, like just like we have like male followers who like love our programming and who don't really care that it's centered around our experience, because our experience is a human experience and the human condition is universal. So although we own our identity, it's not knocking anyone else's. And I think that's the thing too about what we're coming to in our society is like, just own your identity, and then your lived experience and the human experience is going to transcend any gender, racial, able like roles or identity markers, because you know, at this point now everyone's going to try to be like super everything, but it's like, no, just own who you are and connect with people on that level. You should honor who you are. You should be inclusive, but there's no need to be fake about it. And that's the one thing that I would say, like, I really encourage like myself to just own being me, and just, there's no apologies there. Yeah. If it's for you, it's for you. If it's not, it's not.
And that makes me so happy, because it's just like even just like hearing you guys talk, I'm like, yeah. But like that, you know, like that's what people need though. Like you guys saying like it has an effect on people, like regardless of who they are. It's like so true. And I love that you are just more so like filling your own shoes and being like yes to your own identity, just because that is something everyone struggles with. Whatever like aspect of their identity is, like that's what a lot of people struggle with. I honestly feel like that's where a lot of hate comes from. Like it's just like the insecurity in yourself, and you know, thinking that other people are going to take away from you when you don't feel like you even have anything, and like, you know, and that's not the reality. So that's wonderful, and I am like, I bet you like so many people, you know, just feel so like much more confidence just like talking about themselves. You know what I mean? Like I've been to your events, like, you know, like it gives you like an air of confidence and like an air of like understanding. And it's just like people who actually like care if you feel good, like after, you know, like what happens, and not in a, because we want you to like give us more shit. Like it's like, yeah, like you can have a business, but you can also like be earnestly interested in like the well-being of your clients. Like you can. And like I'm excited I'm excited that you guys are like getting more stuff and like that. That's great.
I was just in an interview the other day, and with Heal Up with B, I was on her podcast, and she asked me, you know, what does freedom mean to you? And I said ownership. And it doesn't mean owning a business. I meant owning me, owning my thoughts, owning my being, owning my energy, as well as owning a business, owning my voice, owning my time. To me, that is freedom. And I think that's what we all want. We want that ownership of self, that feeling of self-efficacy and all that. And that's what me and Toni, every time we're thinking about like, what do we want Soultry to be? It's like a place for you to have ownership, visibility, you know, support.
Yeah. And like the more you own your identity, like Trixie, when you're talking about like that hate that other people have to other people, it's also, we internalize that as self-hate. And then you end up doing different things to mask yourself or to assimilate. And so for me, my experience is like shedding all of that like internalized self-hate and just like embracing myself. Like I wear my hair curly all the time. I haven't straightened it in like over 2 years, because I'm embracing myself. Because like for so much of my life, I didn't embrace like what I physically looked like. And that has been liberating too, just like owning like what I literally just like look like how I was born, is also very powerful. And so I feel like a lot of what we do as Soultry Sisters too is just like for everyone to find that self-love within themselves and whatever aspect that is, whether that be like body positivity, identity, whatever that is, sexuality, like just finding that. And then if you have that and like Alyssa said, own that, then it like projects to the world. And then I feel like that's when people don't really mess with you because they know that you're so solid in your own foundation.
I mean, that's essentially like it goes with our saying, like our slogan is live vibrant and shine bright. So the live vibrant part is that conscious, holistic living, wellness, being, and then shine bright is that ownership of self. So that's why we chose that slogan, live vibrant, shine bright. And together we rise. Sorry.
Dot, dot, dot. And together we
I know I have so many hashtags and so it's like just one is good. I was like, I'm a creator. I can't help it.
God. I can like picture you two just like in a room and tell me just being like too much.
Oh my.
Like it's too much. And you're like, but
I feel like for us, it's like I label myself as the visionary, and she's like the one she's like the executioner. She's like, all right, she's the detailed oriented. I'm like, this is what I see. She's like, and so step one is
she's the producer. You're the producer, Toni. Toni, you're the producer.
Yeah, but we're both Pisces, actually. Fun fact. So we're very, very similar, but we're also very different, which is very interesting. So that has been interesting too, like getting to know each other as sisters as we get older is like, oh, you do that too? Oh, you're doing that. Okay, that's a lot of love and a lot of shade. At the same time.
We got a lot of sun, we got a lot of trees.
I mean, honestly, watching you guys in rehearsal together was the most hilarious thing ever. Because it'd always be like, Alyssa's talking about something, and she's like, actually, she does this. And then like, Alyssa, like, and Toni's just like, yeah, no, she does this instead. And she's like,
she was my interpreter. She was like, what she really means is stage left. We're gonna start on count 5. I'm like,
I'm fluent in Alyssa. I can speak her like to this day. If Alyssa has lost something, she misplaced something around the house, I can tell her where it is in like 10 seconds. I'm like, oh, did you check? I haven't been living in California since last year. And I still know where all her stuff is. Her sultry stuff. She'll be looking for sultry stuff. And I could tell her, oh, check that thing. And it's right there. So we're
that's
like,
good. That is good right there. We have reached the end of our hour. This happened really quickly. This went by very, very quickly. Thank you guys so much for coming on and being so like honest and talking about your experience like so honestly. Like I really hope that some of your family members, especially on the Filipino side, like watch this.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because like, you know, like that's how you lived, and you know, if they love you, then this is definitely something that they should know. You know, like mistakes and all and love and all, like it's just like this is a part of who you are. There are a bunch of comments that I'm sorry we didn't address because I wanted them to talk. They can look at the comments. They have a lot to say. Both of them do. So tell the lovely people where they can find you and Soultry Sisters.
Yeah, so you guys can all follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all the socials at Soultry Sisters. Or you can visit our website, soultrysisters.com. We always update the different things that we're doing because we do different events, workshops throughout the months. This week, we do have a few different events coming up, so you can follow us to check them out. And recently, we've been focusing on like creative expression and mental health. So it's really interesting to address those things, especially now. It's really important to have soul care.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have an event coming up actually this Friday. It's a collaboration with The Real and Creative Women Build. So if you want more information, definitely go to our website or our social media and you can get more information to sign up. It's free. So yes, check it out.
Hey! Again, thank you guys for coming. Everyone who is watching, thank you for being here to listen to what the Junious sisters have to say and their experiences and honoring that and being so supportive. I don't know if you guys are looking at comments on your thing, but for being so supportive, everyone's very supportive of you because everyone loves you, and why shouldn't
Yes, I see some people in here. Hi, everyone.
So tomorrow, if you guys want to join back to our live show, I have Crit Wit, and he's amongst many things, he's a cyclist and he cycles for justice. And that's going to be a really interesting conversation. He's a great guy. I just met him, and it's going to be really good, just like this was. So again, Alyssa and Toni, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, and we will catch you later. Bye.